You're listening to Through Help and Back. Through Help and Back is a podcast focused on mental health, addiction, treatment, recovery, and all things related to personal improvement and wellness. Don't worry, we're not here to talk about problems without solutions, and we're definitely not here to talk about struggles without success. So come with your problems, leave with our solutions. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Through Help and Back. We're so glad that you're here. So glad that we're here. It's August 9th. We're filming this. Very exciting episode today. A little different than what you guys have been used to normally because we have an in-person guest. And I understand that that's not a big deal on some podcasts and a lot of the people are in person, but like the geniuses we are, we started this podcast during COVID. And so we got really used to a lot of virtual sessions and a lot of me talking to the TV. But Ian, the producer, he's a hardworking man, and he's committed to changing that and getting us some in-person talent. And we definitely have a very talented and exciting guest today. We're going to be talking to Dave Vigneault. Dave is somebody who can bring a perspective unlike anybody else. I know watching this show, you've grown accustomed to therapists and experts and scientists and psychiatrists talking about certain issues, but there's no expert like the expertise gained actually living through these issues. And so when we talk about addiction and we talk about grief and we talk about loss and we talk about living with chronic pain and we talk about illness and just human stuff, Dave has walked quite a few miles in many pairs of shoes and has had quite a few of those experiences, and we're very fortunate to have him today. He's here and willing to share and talk about that stuff. So, Dave, thank you so much, sir, for being here. How was the trip in? No worries?
It was great. No worries at all. It's a beautiful day out today, and I don't live far away now. I live in southern New Hampshire, and so from Western Mass originally, Greenfield, and moved away to Arkansas for 12 years. And when we came back, my wife and I, we decided to live over the border in New Hampshire.
Nice. Well, you blew my angle. I was going to tell everybody that I was going to ask how your flight was and how that was going. We were going to try to big up the show a little bit, but no, Dave is he's a local from the beginning, but definitely traveled some miles, been a lot of different places. So you've not been in Western Mass and New Hampshire the whole time. You've moved around a little bit, right?
Moved around in 2007. From somebody I met in the business. They were looking for someone to represent them at Walmart, and they needed somebody that Walmart trusted, and they were in a little bit of trouble with that company, and Walmart didn't want to hear from them anymore. Like, they had burned the bridge. And so it was 40% of their business. And so they said, we need to find somebody that they'll talk to. And I happened to meet this guy. We meaning Hood, acquired his company. Gotcha. And the chairman asked me to help him, which I did. And we ended up selling his company, and he ended up going with it. So I hadn't seen him in years, and he just called me up out of the blue. And one thing led to another, and it was an exciting opportunity. Senior vice president role, full reload package. I had 2 kids coming up on college, and they were talking a signing bonus, and like a lot of my problems went away. And I never stopped to think about how difficult this might be. It didn't matter. I mean, it absolutely didn't matter. I was going to rip the cover off the ball, no matter what size the ball was. That was my attitude going in. And boy, hello. Walked into a SEC investigation my second week there. And just, they're just tearing your life apart and all this. But we got through it. And as was committed to when they hired me, when I told the CEO, he said, "What's your goal?" I said, "The goal has to be Supplier of the Year." Yeah. And we achieved it as a team. And the team is the most important part. I've been blessed with some really good teams. I hire a little bit different than other folks. I don't look for a fancy college degree or any of that stuff, and I don't care what color they are, how tall they are, where they can. I don't care about any of that. Do they have the heart? Do they have the passion? Yeah. Can they look you in the eye and say, you know what, I don't know if I can do this, but I'll give you 100% of what I got. And so those are the folks that I gravitate to, and those are the folks I built teams with, and they're passionate like I am about what they do.
That's what I was going to ask. Is that passion or that that need for passion in the role, is that sort of reflective of you? That's how you were growing up? That's the kind of just kid you were, kind of guy you are? I mean, where's that come from?
I had a great life. I had a great childhood. I grew up in a place called Oak Courts, there was post-World War II housing that was put up for veterans. My father was in World War II, and so it was 72 units of post-World War II kids. So I thought it was the greatest neighborhood on the planet, because you could just walk out with a stick, with a wiffle ball, whatever, and you had a game. And so I didn't know we were poor. Nobody told me that part. And I certainly didn't feel poor. My parents, provided me with good clothes and all that stuff. But my father set a very high standard. And so I kind of grew up with this never good enough is what kind of stuck with me. And that's come out in some of the courses that I've taken, some improvement courses that I've taken. Boiled it all off in this one power communication course that I took with a company called Rapport Leadership International. And they take you through these exercises, and you close your eyes, and they play this music, and and at some point they say, you are what you think about. Think about that. And they take you back to a childhood memory, through this exercise. And when they got me to that point, this little kid with my cowboy boots and all that stuff, and the woman said, say the words. What are the words?
What'd you say?
Never good enough. I realized how deep that was.
Is that given to you? Who gave you that?
Father.
That's the high standard.
Yeah, I wanted to make him proud. I didn't, we didn't talk about feelings growing up. That's just, it didn't talk about feelings. What are you, serious? If you had something that was bothering you or something that happened and you took that home, it was, who knows about this? Right. What are you kidding me? Did you tell anybody else? And it was like, yeah, Dad, I'm like dying inside. Never mind that. Who knows about this? So that was kind of odd. So from an early age, you didn't talk about those sort of things. And it wasn't until later on when I got involved with Alcoholics Anonymous that I could start having those conversations. It helped me a lot to be able to build trust and build friendships and share. Share? What are you kidding me? I'm not telling.
Yeah, right.
I'm not telling anybody about any of that. And so, and I was really short. I grew 5 inches after high school.
Okay.
So if that gives you any idea I was short.
How tall are you? You look tall sitting down.
5'5".
Oh, okay.
Right. So, and a half.
Yeah.
But
so you graduated high school like 5'1"?
Just barely. But so
But you did sports and everything, right?
The great equalizer was the sports. Played soccer, played volleyball, did wrestling, did all that sort of thing. I wasn't big enough, obviously, to play football. Yeah. And so that's kind of what I did, and it was that, that drive, that achievement, and lo and behold, I ended up a very competitive person. Everything was a competition, and you had to win. And so, that kind of lived with me the whole time. I'll give you just one example. Our team in Arkansas participated in this national event with this, major company where they actually went to your customer and asked about your service level and your honor, your integrity, all these questions. And so we were up against we're a beverage company, so private label. So we were up against the bigs, Coke, Pepsi, Dr. Pepper Snapple Group,
I've heard of them.
monsters. Yeah. And our little team, right, we came in second in the country. And our company was like ecstatic. Yeah. And so they get the team there, and the guy comes in, and he gives a presentation, and he's waiting for this. So what do you think? Yeah. And my team just looked at him and looked at me, and we said, almost in stereo, sucking socks.
Yeah. Almost, yeah. Well, there's that voice again, not good enough.
Yeah, it wasn't good enough. And the first thing we want to know is, well, who won and how did they do it? And so now we're going to take this clock apart and figure out what's wrong with our clock. Yeah. It never stopped to say, hey, that's quite an accomplishment. We beat 97%, 98%. That didn't matter. And so,
and Now, I hear that a lot. So, doing therapy and working with a lot of family therapy, I hear versions of that story a lot. You know, I can remember having an adult male, in my office, like literally just, barely getting the words out, crying, hard father, and he's like, I did this, and it was all to make you proud, and and what do you have to say to that? What do you have to say to that, Dad? And stone-faced dad looks at him and goes, "You're welcome." Kind of like, So I wonder, what's the impact of that, right? Because obviously we can see the emotion, see how you're feeling about that, but growing up, was it just the pressure? Was it the stress? Was it the inability to enjoy those accomplishments? That internalization of like, okay, if Dad doesn't think I'm good enough, then I must not be good enough. Like, what is the actual impact of something like that?
The actual impact for me, my parents were really good to me. They loved me. I loved them. They provided. I'm sure now, looking back in hindsight, they sacrificed a lot so that I didn't know where it was coming from, and I didn't question it. But the emotional part changed for me, and I wanted to do something different. So I have 2 boys, and I wanted them to know that it's okay. Yeah. To talk about it, and so I would tell them, "Look, I don't care what you did. You tell me about it. I'll work with you. I'll support you. You lie to me, I'll crucify you." I got to know what I'm dealing with. Right. And,
How did you know how to teach them that, having not experienced it yourself? How'd you figure that out?
Kind of what not to do. Gotcha. I let them know that, they're loved and supported no matter what. And I had a real fear of this, what goes on in this house stays in this house. I needed to break that. And also, real men don't cry, because actually they do, and I do I don't say quite a bit, but I get very passionate about what I do, and I get emotional when I talk about it. Sure. And it just happens, and I'm not ashamed of that.
Because why would you be?
Well, where I came from, real men don't cry. What are you, serious?
Sure. They just have heart attacks.
Yeah, and they keep it all in, and then their chest blows out. And yeah. So, I wanted to be very close with the boys, and I was. Yeah. We did everything together. Camping, fishing, Little League, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts. Both boys became Eagle Scouts. And so they have, the apple doesn't fall really far from the tree, no matter what you do. And so,
but their experience of it could be different, right? Even though they may have that same drive, if it's a shared drive and something that's like supported and celebrated, it's a different experience than acquiring that drive through a constant quest for something you can't really ever achieve, somebody else's approval.
Just apply yourself and do the best you can. And I'm proud of you either way. I'm proud of you if you don't even show up for the game. I still love you.
Does your dad know that you felt this way? Did you guys ever address it? Did you guys ever talk about it? Did you ever have that opportunity to come full circle and be like, "Hey, I know you did your best, but..."
Denial is not a river in Greenfield. Yeah. And so, I attempted to, and obviously in later life, and we never got there, unfortunately.
I just saw you smile a little bit when I gave you the "you're welcome" story. I wondered if maybe that wasn't your experience too. So,
I got a lot of good things from him growing up, and I still quote him to this day. Lessons that I learned, and so I feel very fortunate, very blessed to have the experience that I have.
Yeah, of course.
It was we were from a work hard background. The whole family worked hard. I had a paper route at age 11 or 12, and I picked cucumbers at age 13, and I worked in a bowling alley sweeping the lanes at age 14, and with a work permit thing, and that's just kind of how it was. And I was working for a mason, young guy, right? And the work was ending for the year. It was getting cold, and I wasn't getting 40 hours at $3 an hour. And a buddy of mine was driving a retail truck, delivering milk house to house. And he said, "Hey, they got an opening." I beat feet right down there. I bounced in big as life and said, "Hey, I'm here for this job." And the guy looked at me and said, "You're no truck driver." And I, of course, rose for the bait and said I could do anything. He said, "That's what I mean. You're a salesman." I laughed. I said, "I never sold anything in my life." He got me an interview that day. I drove up to Springfield, Vermont, and they hired me. And so that was my first, foray into competitive for money.
Yeah.
And
Sales.
And
Do you like it?
I loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it. I had a great mentor there, a guy by the name of Larry Page. And he convinced me, just walk in the door. Okay? Salesmen fail because they're lazy or they're scared. Yeah. Okay? So they sit outside that store. They don't want to go in and face that rejection. So they just, the guy doesn't want to buy me. Okay? And they drive away. He said, you will be successful. If you just walk in that door and yell out, "Hey, anybody want to buy milk?" You will be successful. And he convinced me that. And he also taught me about every no, putting me closer to a yes. And so I didn't believe it, but I believed that he believed it. Yeah. And so I did it. And guess what? Wow. I was just very fortunate. I loved working for that company. It was a family-owned business. It was a great experience and kind of set me up for future.
Yeah, and I mean, if we're here to read your resume, I mean, a lot of success. I'm seeing as a father and upcoming in sales, go-getter, moving around. I mean, we talked before. There's a couple of versions of that story of like, there's an opportunity. I'll go right now. Right? Whatever the miles are. Like, I'm on a plane. I'm in a car. You know what I mean?
It's kind of more than that, though, Jace. I always gravitate towards the underdog for whatever reason.
I wonder why. Yeah.
If there's some kind of injustice going on, I got to jump right in the middle of that. Yeah. And so when the kids started playing Little League, I saw what was going on. The coaches' kids are getting all the playing time, and these other kids are riding the pine, and I didn't think it was fair. And so I started, because I can't keep it to myself, I started talking about it, and I'm a hopeless volunteer, put sap on my forehead. I mean, they need help, I'm there. Yeah. And so next thing I know, I'm the vice president of the junior division. Next thing I know, I'm the president of the league. Right. And so we implemented a lot of things. We implemented Corey checks. So if you're going to be inside the fence, we're going to know who you are. Right. And boy, I took a lot of flack on that. But it was for the kids, and I just kept focused. Look, it's for the kids, and we instituted, minimum playing time. Okay, if the kid's on the team, if he's in the junior division, he's going to play 3 innings, no matter what. If he's in the senior division, he's going to play 2 innings, no matter what. None of this, because the parents, the fathers, they get so competitive, right? They want to put the best kids out there. Well, you know what? These other kids paid their $40 to join the league. These other kids sold candy or whatever and these other kids showed up to practice. And so who's going to speak for them? Well, and that kind of happens to me everywhere I go. I can't seem to help myself.
You are also putting yourself over and over again in these various pressure cookers, right? Like I'm advocating for the kids. There's a lot of pressure to that. Big money on the sales. Got to get the highest goal. So, coping skills, like we talk about, there's a lot of ways to cope, positive and negative. I'm curious about your coping skills during that time and how those developed, and if there weren't some negative coping skills that might have developed to help take the steam off and deal with that pressure, because that's a lot of pressure-packed situations for one guy.
There was, and I gravitated towards that always. And I had some experiences. One of them I talked about, Rapport Leadership International. That's something that you fly into Las Vegas and you drive 90 miles out into the desert, this place called Alamo. And, there's a Leadership 1, Leadership 2. But to your question, in one of those exercises, which is a team building exercise, and I had this confrontation with a guy. And he and I were locked. We're locked, okay? I'm not happy, and I'm not backing up. And the trainer, who was super qualified, he let it go on until it got to this fevered pitch, and then he called a timeout. He said, "David, stop. Look at this right now." You're right. Dead right. But you're shut down. And he was right. I got to a certain point and I was not receptive.
Right. Well, you hadn't had a lot of practice talking about feelings or dealing with emotions in an externalized way, right? You're carrying that stuff around, and it feels. You seem like a great guy and like really relaxed right now. But I wonder if 25-year-old, 35-year-old, 40-year-old you didn't have a little bit of that time bomb aspect, right? If you're carrying this around and it's building, and it's like, okay, now I'm going to lock onto this issue. I haven't had this opportunity to externalize my feelings and get all this stuff out. So I'm going to give it all to you now. And we're going to talk about this, but we're really not talking about that, right? Like I'm bringing a lot of stuff to the party. So, and is that where because you'd mentioned Alcoholics Anonymous, is that where, drinking and other habits like that played a role for you? Was that the pressure relief, or how did that develop? What role did that play?
It started off really feeling sorry for myself. My father got transferred to New York between my junior and senior year. Okay. So we moved out to New York, and I was in Franklin Delano Roosevelt High School, right? It was the second year of forced busing, which was a whole other adventure because, I grew up in the projects. Black, white, Puerto Rican, didn't make any difference. They were my friend. Either you're a friend or you're not a friend. And how far can you hit a baseball?
Right.
That's how we judge things. And so that was an eye-opening experience. But anyway, I met a girl. And started to date seriously for about a year and a half. And she decided that she was going to move on. Mm-hmm. She'd met some, Italian stallion, his name was Middo. And, did you have sex?
What are you going to do against a Middo, man?
Did you? I
fair.
Right? Not good enough. And so that just hit me, and it was really hard. So, but the drinking age was 18 out there. Gotcha. And I worked in a place that had live music 3 nights a week. And so I would work, and then it became I would stop at this place called the Crow's Nest on the way in, and at 18 years old, I was a daily drinker. That's how that ended up. Yeah. And I had a lot of fun with it. Loved it, loved everything about it. You talk about doing things to excess. I would drink until I puked, and then I would drink some more, and then make excuses for it, and blackouts and car wrecks and just everything to excess, including that. And then it got to a point where somebody called me on it, and I went to AA to prove that I wasn't an alcoholic.
Yeah. Was that the treatment? So somebody, like you're 18 at this time?
No, it started when I was 18.
Gotcha.
Okay,
so you're still really young.
So 1973. Okay, I didn't go into AA until 1981.
Okay.
And I stayed in there from 81 to 83, earning my right to drink, white knuckling it and, going to meetings. But, I was there to prove that I wasn't alcoholic. So I stopped drinking for 2 years. So, okay, so I must be cured, right? How can you be a drunk if you hadn't had a drink in 2 years?
Right. That's a good point.
And so then I was playing. I like to play cards. Gambling is a part of my, along with everything else. And we're playing cards in this bar, and then the bar closed, and we were playing cards on the bar. And in my mind, I was losing. In my mind, I was losing because these other guys were drunk. They weren't afraid to bet the money.
Right. They weren't playing right.
Yeah, so I told the bartender, just put some vodka in that Coke, but don't tell anybody. Yeah. I left there in a blackout. I owed $600 to not very nice people that I didn't have, and I was off and running. But I was going to do it different. I was going to control it, and so I did the whole, only drink on weekends, stick to beer, all the things that you hear. But it didn't work out that way, and I ended up in the Brattleboro Retreat. And I did 28 days in the Brattleboro Retreat. And so I came into the second time knowing that I was alcoholic.
Kicked your butt a little bit.
Took me down a notch, but I could still beat it like everything else, but I got to beat it my way. You get these books and these pamphlets, and come on, I'm not going to sit around this basement with all these holy rollers and tell me, hey, forget about it, right? I mean, you got to have action, and so I did that and stayed sober almost a year. I was 9 days short of a year, and had a development in my life that I did not see coming. And I didn't have the tools to handle it. But I knew I couldn't drink. Absolutely knew I couldn't drink. But I could pick up another substance just to take the edge off, just to make the hump. Not going to drink, but just get a little white powder and everything will be fine.
Yeah.
And I stayed out for about a month and a half. Probably that was in August. My sobriety date now is 10/4/93.
Yeah. That's from everything, or
yes. Yeah. So I've been clean and sober now. It would be 30 years in October. I haven't had a drink in 30 years, but I've been clean and sober 29 years. Gotcha. And that's, I might be splitting the hairs, but it's important to me because the continuous sobriety is really the only thing that counts. But so that's important to me, and I've held on to that, because I've had a lot of opportunities or excuses that I could have utilized. Sure. All right, if this happened to you, guess what? But I didn't, because the third time I came in, again, knowing I'm alcoholic, but I was willing to do it their way, the way it was supposed to be done. And, all the textbook things that you hear about, take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth, and, and I gravitated towards the old guys, the people that have been sober for a while. I wasn't there for the, AA love on campus, that sort of thing. I stuck with I stuck with the guys that had been around, and because I was there to save my life.
Well, you got another mentor, right? I'm thinking about your sales mentor, right, and teaching you, and so you found another mentor.
I did. I found a guy that ultimately sponsored me.
Okay.
And the last time I came in, I actually came in via a detox unit. The detox in Greenfield, and that was, of course, I showed up there like I was checking in at the Holiday Inn with my bags, and they threw me out. They didn't have a bed, but they called me the next day, and so I went in, and I was going to run again. I went in there early in the week, and on Thursday, I called this guy up and said, "Yeah, I'm done with this. Pick me up." And he said, "No, David, we had a deal. If you're here on Saturday, I'll pick you up." So I called my now ex-wife and said, "Hey, I've had enough of this. And click, don't bother." And the third call was to a good personal friend of mine, and told him what was going on, and he said, "You're in the right place." Yeah. So I stayed there.
Real good.
But I probably wouldn't have if I was handled any other way than the way this guy did it to me at the time. He came up and he said, "Hey, sport, what's your plan?" I said, "What do you mean?" "Either you had enough or you haven't. And if you haven't, get out. I need the bed." I said, you can't throw me out of here." "I can, and I will." And so he said, "You think about it. I'll be back to check on you." That's when I made those 3 phone calls, right? I was going to show
Screw
him.
This guy.
I don't need you. Yeah. And after going 0 for 3 on the phone calls, he came back and said, "What's it going to be?" And I said, "I'm staying." He said, "Well, then you got some work to do." And so for me, this might sound cold or harsh to people, I don't know, but for me, that's probably the only thing that would have worked.
Right.
It's the only thing that would have worked. There's getting knocked down a peg, and then there's getting just taken right off the horse completely with a backhander, and that's apparently what I needed. And so
was that one of the concepts that people talk about a lot? Is like hitting bottom. Like, is you're hitting bottom, or do you invest in that concept? And was that moment, like nowhere to go? So I got to dig in.
I hit several bottoms along the way, and for me, it definitely had to hit bottom. The bottom for me was, and I always get emotional when I talk about it.
30 years, man, and it's still right there, ain't it?
But that's what it has to be.
You're not here without it.
So when you have these other things go on in your life, you know, you get divorced or you get fired. I've been through all of these things. Now I have cancer, but I still have that. I can drink again. I know I can.
Sure. Yeah, you could right now.
I don't know if I can stop again. And I've had some close calls several times. You know, I in my mind, I was going to go. I, you know, called a dealer friend of mine, and I couldn't get a hold of him. And so I can remember being outside this meeting saying, all right, I'm going to go to the meeting, but if I still feel the same way when I come out, I'm gone. Fortunately, I went to the meeting, and I didn't feel the same way when I walked out. I had another time where I was coming out of a meeting up in Shelburne Falls, and I was going. I was going. I knew I was going. Yeah. And this girl called out to me, "Hey, Dave." What? I turned around and, you know, the evil Dave, you know, she was cute, but she's like, "What are you doing?" "What do you mean?" "Where are you going?" "Oh, I'm going home." "Why don't you stay and talk to me for a little while?" You know, she knew. Yeah. She absolutely knew, just like I know now. And so that saved my life. And then I went through a whole series of craziness after I'd moved to Arkansas, where I had gotten divorced after 25 years, and my sister was suing me for, you know, something to do with my mother's estate. My mother was still alive, and then my mother died, and then my father died, and, you know, I was having some challenges at work, and the lawyers were just eating me alive. I mean, just eating me alive. And at 19 years sober, I was in a meeting with some friends, obviously, this men's group that I belonged to. And I loved and respected these guys. And I just said, "Hey, guys, you know, I'm sorry, but I'm going." Yeah. I'm like, "Going where?" I said, "I'm going to Thailand. You know, I've had it. I'm going to sell all this crap, everything I own, going to Thailand." Like, and they said, "David, you might not make it back." I said, "I'm not coming back." Right. That's to where I got. 19 years sober, that's where I got to. And these guys wouldn't let me go. You know, they talked to me and
I think that's one of the most confusing parts about addiction for people who haven't experienced it is you talk about hitting several bottoms. You're very emotional about it. It's like, how can you go through all the shit and still have the urge for the thing that would take you right back there? Yeah. How do you understand that? Like, I mean, it's got to be one of those things that personally you're like you said, evil Dave and good Dave. It's got to confuse the hell out of you.
I went through that when I was, I remember an experience, Jace, very vividly. Okay. I was still living in Massachusetts at the time. So this was, you know, pre-2007. So I could have been sober 10 years maybe. I was still in that same house and still looking into that same mirror. You know, and he's still in there, isn't he? Oh, yeah. Yeah, he is. Because I had looked in that mirror before I had gotten sober. And literally, you see that, I used to like cartoons. I used to watch the Flintstones as a kid, right? And there's this one thing with, you got, you know, the fairy with the halo on one shoulder, and you got the evil guy, you know, with the pitchfork on the other shoulder. Yeah. And I can remember I getting really drunk, really sick. And I'm looking in this mirror, and I look terrible, right? I'm putting cold water on my face because I got to go to work. Never miss work. And, you know, I'm never going to do that again, and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, the angel's telling me, good job. And then the other guy says, "You know you are. 5 o'clock, baby." Life after death. And I'm looking at myself in this mirror, having this conversation with myself. And you say, "How do you do it?" Well, I don't know, other than the fact that I accept the fact that I have that gene. Didn't ask for it, didn't do anything to create it. I believe I was born with it. And I have that gene, and I can't change that. You know, what I have is well, now I have several things that are incurable, but...
Starting a collection.
Yeah, I'm starting a collection, right? So it's... And I know that. And I don't like who I am and what I become when I drink or use. And, you know, none of this stuff is original. I mean, I hear it in the meetings, but I was sitting there one time and this guy said, if I came in a package, it would say instant AH on the package, just add alcohol.
Yeah.
And that was me. And it just hit me right between the eyes. It's like, yeah. Because I don't know who comes out of that when the alcohol goes in. And then, I know that I have to keep working, because working on my sobriety and on my spiritual health, because, another old guy says, look, if you always do what you always did, that old saying. And then the simple things that I keep in my head, when you start to have that doubt, you're in this place, everybody's having a good time. I know in my heart that once you're a pickle, you can never be a cucumber again. And so it's dangerous for me. So I don't do it. Yeah. And that's not my go-to when I have a challenge. And I know it ends in, insanity, death, or whatever. And I'm certainly not afraid to die. That's just not a fear that I have. But I don't want to leave my family in the lurch. I don't want to be an embarrassment on the way out, because, all kinds of suicidal thoughts, all that stuff goes on in your head. And you say, I can't do that to my boys. I can't do that to my wife. Forget about what you're doing to yourself. I just can't do that.
You probably don't care about that part, though, the self. It's like you've been ready to destroy the self for a long time. It's the other stuff, right?
I've done everything I know how to destroy it.
Were your kids old enough to be aware when you were still using? Like, do they remember that guy?
The older one has some memory. The younger one, probably not. They were 4 and 6 when I came in.
Good age to get clean before the tape recorder really gets going, right? The memories are fuzzy at 4 to 6.
Yeah, I don't, and I wasn't a fallen down drunk guy at home or whatever, that sort of thing. So it was important for me that they didn't see that. But, the behavior was there.
And you knew.
I knew.
Yeah.
I knew. And so I didn't want that for them. Absolutely did not want that for them. And so I was going through some interesting stuff there at the end. And I can remember very vividly my oldest boy calling me up on the phone. And I went over to see him. He was at the in-laws' house. And he came running out. And he gave me this Winnie the Pooh doll, which I still have to this day. And that did it. That was for me. That was the end. And he's crying and holding me. So I said, Rob, what do you want? And he said, all I want is to be with you, Dad.
Right in the heart.
Yeah, and it hits me to this day. I choke up every time I talk about it. But it's just something that happened, and so.
But it's still true. That's why you still feel it, right? There's part of him who still just wants his dad, and now that you're older, you just want to be around your kids.
I get it. Yeah, I totally get it. So
they have a way, man. They have a way of quieting all that other noise and rationalization and justification and the stories we tell ourselves. Kids have a way of cutting through all that stuff and saying the simplest stuff. If it hurts you, why do you do it? Or don't hurt yourself. Or I just want you.
I know.
It's just like, yeah.
Seems so simple.
Easy. So easy.
What's interesting, though, you asked about bottoms. Bottom is different for everyone. I can remember very vividly being in the retreat, okay, and that's a super nice place, by the way. The 28-day program, and I was staying in. It was wild when I first went in because, I was in bad shape. I was in bad shape, and they wanted to give me an injection of some stuff to slow me down and, whatever, and I was having none of it. I was convinced that they were looking to give me an injection so that they could perform a lobotomy. And I believed that. And I was on the second floor of this place, and I was going over the rail.
Were you having tremors and everything? Were you physically detoxing? And
oh yeah, I was shaking out of my. Yeah, I was not in very good condition. And I remember this guy who was in there, older gentleman. He's got a black eye and all this stuff. And for whatever reason, I trusted him. And so I said to him, I said, will you watch while I sleep, right? Because I know what they're going to do. They're coming for me. Don't let them. And so, here, he was kind of my first friend, in the program. And I remember they took all my stuff, right, when I checked in. And I can remember complaining to him. I said, Mac, they took my aftershave, Old Spice aftershave. Yeah. What do they think? I'm going to drink it?
That's exactly what they think.
And he says to me, it's not that bad with orange juice. I went, wow. What? This is the guy who was trusting right? Didn't trust the nurse, didn't trust the doctors, but I trusted this guy for whatever reason. And then they moved me to this other place called Ripley, and you'd sit around and you have discussions and readings. You get introduced to it.
Talk about your feelings.
Yeah, and there was just this guy there, and he's sharing about how he comes home every night from work and has a six-pack. I'm looking at him. I said, I'm waiting for the...
What are you doing here?
So I said to him, I said, what are you doing here? He said, no, you don't understand. I come home every night and have a six-pack. A six-pack? That's it? Like, what are you... If I could limit myself to a six-pack, I'd never see the inside of this place, ever. And so, but that was his bottom.
That's right.
That was his bottom. And so, they taught me something that was identify with the feelings, David. Don't compare. Don't compare your story to that. Their story. It's not about that. And so that was an odd concept to grasp.
Before we go on, I want to say a few words about Anew Behavioral Health. Anew Behavioral Health is an outpatient provider of mental health and substance abuse services in Ohio and New Hampshire. That means that Anew can successfully treat mental health and substance abuse issues or dual diagnosis if you're struggling with both. Their integrated approach allows for them to successfully address issues related to anxiety, depression, addiction, trauma, and really anything that stands between your life and the life you could be living. You really cannot bring them an issue that they have not successfully treated. They have also solved one of the biggest problems for people seeking help. They have a dedicated team waiting to hear from you at helpnow@anewbh.com. If you contact them today, within 24 hours, you will have heard back from, wait for this, a real live person, and will also have your first appointment scheduled at that time. So how do you contact them? Well, if you're in Ohio or New Hampshire, you're probably close to one of their local locations. You're welcome to go in. If not, you can always reach them online at anewbh.com. And if you're interested in services for you or loved one, use that address, helpnow@anewbh.com. Have you found that a lot of the skills, or any of the skills, I guess, that you've used to stay sober, to stay centered, while sober, to deal with triggers and cravings, has any of that been helpful for you since your cancer diagnosis? Have you applied that across, or is that a whole different ballgame?
It's not a whole different ballgame. It's all part of the same game. Because a lot of the feelings, the anger, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? And in my case, I was in pain. I was fine one day, and then I wasn't. And my spleen had just blown up. That's where the leukemia, as I found out I had, that's where that hit me.
How long ago was that?
That was about the 20th of February in 2021.
All right, so a little over 2 years.
A little over 2 years.
So 3 years ago, you felt great. Nothing. All life is good. I'm sober.
2.5 years and 1 day ago, I felt great. I was out on my tractor. We had some trees that needed to be taken down on the property, and I got a guy come in to drop the trees, and I was, using a chipper and a winch and the tractor and hauling the stuff away.
Fun.
I was having a ball, living large. And then I went to get out of the tractor, and I was like, I had this pain. I thought that I was just, first thing I thought, what, I got a hernia doing this? But I was bloated, but it was all high. I remember saying to my wife, I said, I feel like I swallowed a pumpkin, but it's high, it's not low. Something's not right there. But I didn't have any pain at that time. And then I did. And so I thought I was constipated. So I did this, Zoom call. I did a Zoom call with my doctor in Arkansas because I hadn't even gotten situated up here. And he gave me the cleanse like you have before a colonoscopy, and that cleaned everything out, but I still had the pain, so I did it the second day in a row, which I don't advise. Now I was really cleaned out, but I still had the pain. So he said, if you still have the pain, you got to go get looked at. So it's a Friday night. My wife said, you got to get up there. I said, I'm not going to the emergency room on a Friday night. Not happening. So I got up early and went Saturday morning, and they took blood, and as it turned out, my white cell count was 310,000.
That's not what it should be.
No, it's supposed to be like 4,000 to 9,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
And that nice young doc, I mean, he comes in and he can't find the words. I don't know. Apparently, he hasn't had to tell too many people that kind of news. And I just said, look, pal, what? Spit it out. You'll feel better. It's very cleansing. Are we talking the C word here? And he said, yeah. I said, wow. That hit me hard. But I still didn't know what it meant, right? And so a couple days later, that was on a Saturday. On Monday, I went to see the cancer doctor. And at the time, they didn't know if it was CLL or PLL. CLL, you got a shot. PLL, not so much. And so they referred me up to Dartmouth Medical Center, which that is the place you want to go. That is the place you want to go if you're sick. I can't say enough about those people. They saved my life. There's no question about it. And so I saw the doctor up there in oncology, and he wanted to do a bone marrow biopsy. And I was like, I don't like needles anyway, but you're going to drill a hole to get to the bone. It just didn't sound like anything I wanted to participate in. But he's a really nice guy and an older gentleman, and he said, look, I said older, that's funny, he's younger than me, but it wasn't a kid. I mean,
right,
the kid that told me I had leukemia, I don't think he had shaved yet. But and so he said, look, think of it as your blood being like a fingerprint. The bone marrow is like DNA. Yeah. It's going to give us more information. And so I met with the woman that actually does it, and she said, yeah, I hear you're not too keen on
You're the weird one.
Yeah, not too keen.
The one weird guy who doesn't want this.
Yeah, so she just kind of talked me through what they do, and but what she told me is, look, I do this every day. I do probably 4 a day, and 4 days a week, and so that gave them the information that they needed for proper diagnosis.
Are you a PLL or a CLL?
No, I'm a CLL.
Okay.
But at the time, the doctor that I met with in Keene that ended up referring me up there, I said to him, look, because I got to know, right? Let's don't beat around the bush. Just give it to me straight. I'm thinking I want this information, right? What are we talking about here? How long do I have? 6 months.
That's it. The end.
That got real quick. Like all the experiences, Chase, there's a silver lining to it that you don't necessarily see at the time. I was retired, but I never felt like I deserved to retire. I kind of felt guilty about it, and I can do more.
There's work to be done. What are you doing on the tractor?
What is this? Well, now I could retire, legit.
You'd earned it.
I've earned it.
I've earned the right.
And then the other thing is, and we've talked a lot about, being competitive and getting all caught up and this being driven to win and all that stuff. When you get news like that, it just drops away. What seemed so important yesterday is like beyond irrelevant today. Just doesn't matter. So that was a gift.
Did you feel that right away?
I did.
Right away.
Right away. It's like, wow. Well, 6 months wasn't a lot of time. I had to figure out what my next move was going to be and what does this mean and so my spleen was so huge, it was so distended, it was inoperable because it would burst. They couldn't treat it with radiation or whatever. So I went to an acupuncturist, somebody that my wife knew, had met 30 years ago, probably she went to him, called him. He remembered her. And she told him what was going on. He said, tell David I'll see him. And so I went down, and in 6 weeks, he reduced that swelling in that spleen to the point where I could actually ride in a car and go over a bump and not be, and I could bend over. I could tie my shoes again, and I could eat again because it was so distended. There was no room, so I could eat, just little bits. And so I dropped like 12 pounds, and it seemed like days.
All the stuff we take for granted, though, right? Like, who would think you'd ever say a little prayer of thanks going over a bump without pain? You never think about it. You don't give a shit about any of that stuff. And now it's like the greatest. You're like, yeah.
I loved my
awesome.
I loved my truck, but I couldn't take that truck down the road we lived on. It was too rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, I got home that day. I said, I can't get back in that truck. And so I started on chemo in a pill form. And by now, my white cell count had gone up to 455,000. And by the time I started the chemo, and right after you start, it goes up, I was at 672,000. And I said to the doctor, I said, what's the record?
Here you go.
He said, you got it.
Yeah, here you go.
So it just kind of stays with you through everything that you do. And so I was gonna beat it. There's no question. I was not going to give up, no matter what. Yeah. And so I did the pill form, and everything was going pretty well. It does weird things to your body, and your fingernails grow out strange, and you bump yourself and you swell up, and if you cut yourself, you don't stop bleeding. I mean, all that kind of stuff goes on. But I went there on a Friday, and he said, "Hey, you're doing great." Yeah. Saturday, I went out with my son and stepdaughter, Cheryl's daughter, and went to lunch in Brattleboro. Had a great time, beautiful day. Went to the record shop and looked at old CDs and just had a great time. That was Saturday. I woke up Sunday morning completely covered head to toe with a rash. My toes were all purple. My legs were swollen up. I was like, what is going on here? I had a bad reaction. So they said, you got to stop the chemo right away. You got to come in, this and that. Well, I didn't make it. That was on a Sunday. I called them on Monday, and Tuesday night I got this headache. I've had headaches before, but not like that. I mean, right smack in the middle. It's like, wow, it's like an ice pick in there. And my wife is out of town, and so I'm home, and I'm suffering, and she comes home from the airport and takes one look at me and said, what are you doing? I said, something's wrong. You need to get me to DART. Something's wrong. I don't know what, but something's not right here. And I had this wicked headache, so she gave me one of her migraine pills and threw me in a car and took me to Dartmouth. And they admitted me into the intensive care unit right away. I spent 6 days there. Wow. They could not believe I didn't have a stroke. They wake you up every 2 hours, and they're drawing blood, seemed like every 10 seconds, and all kinds of weird stuff happened. My legs swelled up, but something kind of cool came out of that too. Like, I had seen Crocs before, but I was like, it just wasn't my style. I wasn't going to wear Crocs before.
The minivan of shoes.
But when I had to come home from the hospital, there wasn't anything I could put on my feet.
Yeah, right.
So she brought me a set of Crocs. I love them. I wear them for slippers, and so see, there's the silver lining there.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of neat. And this eye was like out to here, and I had all this other stuff going on, and
what was it? It was just the reaction to the medication, or
not a brain tumor.
Oh, by the way.
But what the pain was because it was hemorrhaging, and I'm in that same boat. Take it out, and they couldn't take it out because of being on chemo. Yeah. I'd have bled out on the table, so they have to get me off of the chemo, 7 to 9 days, so that they can do the surgery. And the trick is that you don't go blind or you don't strike out before a week in the middle somewhere. And so they had just an incredible staff, but you got to keep your sense of humor. Yeah. Even with this massive headache, and I'm in this hospital room, and I became really sensitive to light. Sure. And so I've got the shades taped, and I'm in this room and like in this cave, and I'm in a lot of pain. And at the time they were adding rooms, right? So running jackhammers and heavy equipment outside of my room. And my head is just like pounding.
Get your own jackhammers.
Yeah. And all of a sudden this nurse comes in. I thought it was a nurse. She's got the mask on or whatever. And she introduces herself as Dr. Payne. I just burst out laughing in the middle of all this, and I said to her, "You can't even make this up.
Right.
You can't make this up." And so they kept me in there, got me stabilized over the next 6 days, and then they said, "Dave, we're going to let you go home. 2 days. You just need to rest, and then come back and we'll take it out." And that's what they did.
So it's gone. You went through the brain surgery.
I did.
They cut your head open and went and got it, huh?
They go up for where mine was. It hit right between the optic nerves. It hit my pituitary, so knocked that out. Knocked my testosterone out. That's a whole nother venture. Went down. I didn't go to 0. I went to 4.
Okay. You hung in there.
I hung in there at 4.
Yeah.
It was experiences with that, and I want to get back to that in a second because this is kind of important. And then it screwed up my thyroid, right? So we had all that going on. But when the testosterone was knocked out, and I was having all these other problems, and they had gone up, they go up your nose to where mine was located. They go up your nose to take it. And I don't know. I was asleep, but they must have gone up there with the kids erector set or something. I mean, it was painful.
What's that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where they reach up there, like that old one where you pull the tracking device out? Have you ever seen that?
No,
oh my gosh!
I don't think I want to.
We got to mark that. Put that in one of the clips of the shorts. But yeah, I forget what it's like. Some futuristic movie, and he's got a tracker, and they stick a thing in there. I'm just imagining that, just yanking that out of your sinuses.
But I started experiencing hot flashes, like women go through with menopause or whatever. And I'll tell you what, I have a lot of sympathy for anybody that has experienced that, because I mean, it's just, you're sitting there and all of a sudden just whoosh, like an inferno.
But your body's betraying you left and right. I mean, all the things you could count on, right? You just can't count on any of it. It's just doing its own thing.
Yeah, I mean, and I got the worst part of the whole episode was I got bloody noses, like really bad. I couldn't go anywhere because if I bent over to tie my shoes, I'd spring a leak, and I had learn how to stop it myself, and I've got all these kits and all the cars, and it's like, and you just feel like, just like total crap.
But you got your Crocs, so.
I had my Crocs, baby. And I had a really nice bathrobe.
Yeah. That's nice.
That I got at Miller Brothers here when they were still open in Keene, and so it was really soft, and so.
It's the little things, yeah.
So it was a very difficult time in my marriage. I met my wife at our 40th high school reunion, and I was talking to my son the day before, and he says, "Hey, Dad, you're going to go to that reunion?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to go. Should be a hoot. 40 years, never been." He said, "Any action?" I said, I can't talk to you about that." He said, "No, seriously." He said, "Anybody you might want to see?" And I said, "Well, I thought about that. There was this one girl. Now, if I run into her, right, it'd be a good night." I walk in, boom, first person I see, she's standing there. Couldn't believe it. Amazing. I walked right up to her. I said, "Cheryl, I was just talking about you." And she said, "Really, why?" I said, "Because I've been in love with you for 40 years.
Good evening. Yeah.
And so we ended up, she was in the military, and we had a 1.5 year long distance relationship. We would talk on the phone every morning and every night. And then at the end of the night, I would play slow music through my headset, and we would slow dance.
Romantic.
And then we would pray together. And we did that every day for 1.5 years. And so then when she retired from the military, came to Arkansas because I was still working. And we were living the dream. I mean, we were doing, that was the dream. And then we came back to New England, and this happened. And I just felt horrible. This is not
what you came here for.
Not why we came here. It's not what you signed up for. I felt really bad about that. And so when I'm meeting with the oncology team, and I got all the stuff going on that I've just described, and the doctor says to me, "Is there any what are your main concerns now at this point of your treatment? And I said, I feel very badly for my wife. She's in a lot of pain watching me, and I don't know what I can do to help her. I mean, I don't think he saw that coming.
Yeah, right.
But that was the most important thing to me at that time. Yeah. Forget about the eyeball up here and the swollen feet and the erector set up your nose and the leukemia for the rest of your life and all of that. But that's hard.
Yeah, I'm glad you went there, because that was my next question anyway. You're doing a great job of detailing the physical aspect, but I got to imagine a lot of doubt, a lot of fear, a lot of, what is the internal experience of that? I know it hurts, and I know there's pain, and I know there's physical aspects, but you're also facing, your potential demise. And we talk about that in that moment, like the end, right? And so riding those waves of I'm okay, I'm not okay, I'm okay, I'm not okay. I mean, I just think mentally that would have to be such a potentially exhausting experience. I don't know. What is that actually like to go through?
It is exhausting because I have sleep apnea. Yeah. So I sleep with, the machine, the one I use goes over your nose, and you turn that thing on, and it keeps you from snoring, which is awesome, mm-hmm. right? But also keeps you from holding your breath, which is part of the sleep apnea. Right. But this whole time that I'm recovering, I can't use that. Mm. And so now I'm really not, I mean, I don't sleep well without it on a good day. Yeah. Now with this and all of the pain, and you have to drink a lot of water, so you're getting up all the time. It's just, so your body is just exhausted. And you have a lot of time to reflect. You're sitting there in that chair. I spent 1.5 years basically in a chair. Atrophy is real, I can tell you that. Now I'm coming back. I'm going to the gym a couple times a week and coming alive again. Have some stuff that happened that is not going to get better, like the double vision when I look up, and that's the balance and that sort of thing. But you start looking back. Now that you're faced with 6 months, mm-hmm. right? That was now over 2 years ago. Right. But you start looking back, what could I have done differently? And one of the traps for me, I don't know if it's this way for everybody, is I started to really get down on myself. You did this.
Beating yourself up for past mistakes.
Absolutely, beating yourself up for past mistakes, because now you're in a situation. You're in this chair. You're getting bloody noses every 5 minutes. You're not sleeping. You've got leukemia for the rest of your life. You're taking chemo. Not much you're going to do about it now. Sport. Mm-hmm. So that was really hard. That was really emotional for me about the things I could have done better. My wife was incredibly supportive through that. She used to give me these leg rubs at night, because she was frustrated too, because she wanted to help. And she couldn't
feels
help.
helpless.
Yeah. And so, but for me, I wanted to give back.
That was the answer to the regrets. That was the answer to the mistakes, is like, let's just do it better going forward.
You can't do anything about that. But with what you've been through, David, you didn't give up. Okay? Could have very easily given up. And I could have easily, at one point in that 6-day spread, I could have taken my life just by giving up, And that was a really strange experience. I'd love to say that I saw the white light and the door opened and the angel says, you have the opportunity. No, the other guy showed up. And it got ugly. And I just held on. I squeezed so tight that I ulcerated my thumb from the inside out. I wasn't going. I was not going to quit. My work's not done. And so I know it can be done. I know you can survive. I couldn't imagine anything else going wrong with my body. The whole thing.
What's left?
I'm freaking falling apart.
And I sprained my ankle. Like, what's left? Yeah. So not to get melodramatic about it, but you prayed every night. You obviously a man of faith and have that belief. And if that's the guy that shows up in your darkest hour, did you feel I'm going to hell? I mean, that's where you were headed?
It was hard,
terrifying,
but I can do better. And I won't give up, ever. And I wanted to give back by telling other folks, you can do this. Because there's some folks up there that were a lot sicker than I was, if you can imagine. That floor I was on with this 6 or 7 beds in there, to my knowledge, I'm the only one that came out of there.
Wow.
I walked out of there, right? And there's a hospice place that's part of the hospital that's down below, and those folks, they're really suffering. And I saw some folks when I went up there to go back on. I had to go on to this different chemo. This doctor came to see me at 9:30 on a Saturday night and said, "I got something that might help. It's not for everybody. Not for everybody. It takes a commitment." I said to him, "If you take me, I'll commit to it." And what it is you go in every week for a month. You go in every Friday, and they start you on this new chemo, and then every Friday they double the dose. But they have to stick that fire hydrant in your arm, and they have to monitor all this stuff, because when your white cell count's so high, you can get tumor lysis or all this other weird stuff that can happen to you. And it didn't happen to me. And then when I went on to that chemo, to read the label, it's terrifying.
There's a bunch of poison.
Yeah, you got to keep your laundry separate, and you can't swap spit with anybody, and all this other stuff. And I'm reading this thing, and then you want me to swallow this? It was terrifying.
But one of the potential side effects is more life.
What it is it keeps you alive until you die from the cure. is what happens.
Right.
The kidney won't take it, liver won't take it. Something's going to give.
Somebody's going to give up first, right? The cancer's going to give up, or your body's going to give up. Yeah.
So I did everything I could. I did everything that I was told. I followed the instructions, and it was interesting because when I go up there and have gone up there to oncology, I go on a regular basis, and they've asked me to talk to some of the young doctors, saying, "Tell them about your experience," because they look at my chart and they walk in and they say, "This is the guy?" Wait a minute. Right. And so, which was kind of cool. But I said to, I was seeing the head of the oncology up there, and super nice guy. And I said to him, "I want to help. This stuff you got me doing is fairly new, blah, blah, blah. If you have something that comes down the pike that's new, that shows promise, I want to be the first guy in your Rolodex." Somebody else went first, Jace, for me. Yeah. And so that's one way that I can give back. And they've got my history because I've been going up there now for a couple of years, and they followed all my blood work, and they know me. Yeah. And they know I do what I commit to do, and I give them good information, and I don't go up and whine, "Oh, this hurts and that hurts." I just don't operate that way. I give them good data that can be actionable on what happens. So
you're a good guinea pig.
Yeah.
What is your current prognosis? I mean, obviously you've blown through the 6 months.
Yep.
What are they saying now?
Keep doing what you're doing, and we'll keep you on this. I'm on a chemo called Venclexta. I take 400 milligrams of a pill every day. I have to take another pill so that I don't get shingles. And then I take a hydrocortisone. And then I take this other pill for thyroid. But that's really, it sounds like a lot, but it's not.
Based on what you've been through.
I take one on an empty stomach. I take 3 after I eat. I do the chemo at night. And so as long as it keeps working.
So you feel good?
I feel pretty good.
Yeah.
I have some really good days, and I have some days that aren't quite up to speed, and I have no idea when I wake up in the morning what that's going to be. Yeah. Surprise. And so I make the most of it, whatever it is. If it's a really good day, I'm headed for the gym, or I'm going to go out and drag some trees around, or felt pretty good the other day. My wife and I jumped in the car and with the dog and went out to Orvis. Or we'll go to Hampton Beach in the summer. Yeah. What they told me is live your life, and that's what I'm doing. I'm living my life, and I'm looking always for opportunities to help others. And if I said anything today here that touches somebody, then if I help one person, I'll be thrilled.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt about that, Dave. I mean, it's an amazing story. To kind of bring it to a close, because I can't keep you here forever. although I may want to. What a life. I mean, the ups and downs and all the experiences. It certainly hasn't been a straight line from when you're born to here, right? What are the 2 to 3 big takeaways? I mean, what have you learned? What's important now? If you look back and say, I thought this was important, but this is what's really important. I mean, what are those things that are really important, having been through all this?
It's really important to be honest with yourself. I learned that out of the addiction and alcoholism. If you look at it this way, in the simplest form, the whole thing was a big lie. When I first started drinking as a youth, right, I would have 2 beers and say I had 10. And at the end, I'd have 10 and say I had 2. And everything in between was a lie. So don't do that to yourself. Above all, you have to be honest with yourself. And it's so much easier when you're not hoping you don't run into somebody, or who did I tell what to, or whatever. To just be honest and have compassion for others and help others. The only thing that saved me, I believe, out of the whole alcohol experience was helping others. I needed to get out of my own head. That was a bad place to be. And I was fortunate to have a sponsor and people in my life that convinced me. So I went into the prison system and put on meetings for the guys behind the walls. And I chaired meetings. I showed up every Sunday at the Crazy Nooner and did that. And so give back. Give back. Help others. You're doing more for yourself. You're doing more for yourself than you could ever possibly imagine by doing for others. And that has saved me. And then when you have financial problems, and I had all kinds of problems, but and I grew up Catholic, so I'd like to joke that I'm a recovering Catholic, but I discovered quite by accident a church in Arkansas that my son's girlfriend wanted to go see, and I said, I'll take you there. And so I'm in the middle of all kinds of legal problems with the divorce and my sister and all this other stuff, and they're just cleaning my clock. I mean, I spent tens of thousands of dollars on attorneys, and I walk into this place with her to see what it's all about, and this guy, Pastor Ronnie Floyd, gets up there. Nice suit, he was dressed impeccably. They used to call him Armani Ronnie and all that, but he gets up there, and the first words out of his mouth is, "The bank account can go to 0, and Jesus is still on the throne." Right between the eyes. And then, as things progressed, and I was going through, so I ended up going there on a regular basis, and I got a lot out of it, but I was going through another very difficult time, and it was around Easter time, and he got up there and he said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." And all stuff that we've heard, but it takes on a different meaning when it's happening to you. And so I just do my best on a daily basis to be a good person, and to be honest, and to help others, and absolutely do not give up, ever. The most difficult thing in the beginning, especially with the sobriety, is you got this wedding coming up in 2 weeks. How am I not going to? No, just keep it simple, keep it small. It's simple, not to be confused with easy. Okay, and you keep it in the now, keep it real, keep it one day at a time, and don't be afraid to show other people. If nobody's told you that they love you today, I do.
We have a rule in our house, and it's going to sound really creepy at first, right? So please stay with me. But I grew up in one of those tougher households too, period of time, and I have a lot of loving family. All the women in my family were very loving. All the men in my family were off doing stuff, So our rule is we touch our kids every day. They're getting a hug. They go by me in the hallway. Come here. You pull them in. It's important. It's important to feel that and have that experience every day. I don't want them to go one day without knowing and having some evidence. It's one thing to say it, but having some evidence, like, nah, Dad's got me. Dad loves me, And it's funny to hear your story kind of come full circle. It's just, grew up in the best neighborhood ever, out with your friends, connecting, loving, experiencing all the bullshit in the middle. And here you are on the backside, connecting, loving, just experiencing. It's amazing we end up where we start sometimes. But what a ride. What a ride along the way.
It's been a great ride, and I know it's very hard for the boys and for people that are close to you. And, but I told them, celebrate my life. Don't shed a tear for me. I lived my life. I gave it a rip. Yeah. And none of us are getting out of this alive. Okay? I'm not going to be the first guy that lives forever. Okay? It's just not going to happen. And so, just know that I love you, and I want to spend as much time as I can with you and with you guys. But let it be a celebration of life. Think about the good things. Think about the laughs that we had, and the time we went fishing, and you guys were casting up in the trees and that sort of stuff. Because although I'm certainly not afraid to die, I know it's going to be hard for them.
Sure.
Because it's hard for everybody. Yeah. And so I want to do the best I can to set them up for future success. And I'll be checking in on them from the clouds. And the same thing for my wife. I feel very badly because our dream got blown up. And so we're going to make a new one.
They'll miss you. They'll miss you for sure. But it sounds like from the guy who wasn't good enough for so long now, why would they miss you if you weren't good enough?
Right.
So you made a dent. That's awesome, man. We'll stop here. We'll wrap here. But just thank you for sharing so much.
Thanks for having me. I've never done or even considered doing anything like this, but
we did it really well. Yeah. What do you know?
Well, your assistant Ian.
Yeah, producer Ian makes it all work, man.
It started off. I was complimenting him on his bicycle. He had one of those bikes, the Mongoose with big wide tires.
Yeah.
And I just started talking to him, and he started talking to me, and we just connected, and it was really interesting. And he said, would you consider? Yeah. And I said, oh yeah, sure.
And then here you are, right?
And that's what I said to him on the way in. It was the way into the gym. I said, there's no coincidences.
No accidents, man. And somebody's at home listen to this, and they're definitely getting what you want them to get out of this, or at least it's starting the process. It gets them thinking, and maybe it's the thing that leads to the thing. But I just want to thank you and appreciate you so much. And thank you, Ian, for making the contact. It's an amazing episode. I normally do a little wrap-up here where I talk about Anew behavioral health, but I'm not going to do it today. Dave has stolen the show, so we're going to leave it here with Dave's message. You guys heard the commercials. You heard the breaks in between. Anewbh.com. You can find them there. So, take Dave's message. You can't live forever, but you can live for now. So please go do that. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. I'll see you next time. Hey guys, although Through Help and Back is an excellent podcast with a lot of great ideas, I do want to let you know that in no way is Through Help and Back expected to be perceived as or relied upon in any way as specific medical advice or mental health advice for you personally. The information provided through Help and Back on our website or our podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment that can be provided by your own providers. Do not use our content in lieu of professional advice given by qualified medical professionals, and do not disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking professional advice because of the information you have read on our website, heard on our podcast, or otherwise received from us. Although we love discussing issues related to healthcare, mental health, and addiction, we are not providing direct healthcare, mental health care, medical, or nutrition therapy services. We're not attempting to diagnose, treat, prevent, or cure in any manner whatsoever any physical or psychological ailment, any mental or emotional issue, disease, or condition. We are not giving you specific medical, psychological, or religious advice whatsoever. Please take care of yourself and take care of others as you always seek the advice of your own medical providers and your own mental health providers regarding any questions or concerns you have about your specific health, or before implementing any recommendations or suggestions from us. These are ideas that have worked for other people. We think it's important to share them. We do not guarantee that they will work for you specifically. Do not stop taking any medications without speaking to your physician. nurse practitioner, physician assistant, mental health provider, or any other healthcare or medical professional. And if you have or suspect that you have a medical or mental health issue, contact your own healthcare provider promptly. Also, one last thing, if you know or suspect that you are currently experiencing a crisis, it is absolutely imperative that you seek the advice of your doctor or other emergency healthcare services prior to ever thinking about using our content. We love the conversations. We're glad you're stopping by. We hope you take a lot from the content. But again, for your specific individual medical situation, please always seek quality personal care from your own providers. Do not let this information or this advice stand on its own. Thanks so much for listening.